Grandma, you're gonna break a hip out there, Lieutenant Marcus Webb said, laughing as 23 officers erupted in the operations briefing. Master Sergeant Elena Reyes, 55 years old, silver, streaking through her tactical braid, reading glasses hanging from her neck, didn't even look up from the terrain map she was studying. 90 minutes later, Webb wasn't laughing anymore. He was screaming for his mother into a blood-soaked radio while 50 enemy fighters executed a perfect ambush she'd warned him about. 12 Rangers pinned down, 2 already dead. The rest had maybe 3 minutes before complete annihilation. Elena was 200 meters away, looking through her scope at impossible shots, with a shoulder held together by spite and scar tissue, about to show everyone why dismissing the old woman was the last mistake some people ever made. But before we show you what happened, when she finally pulled that trigger drop, a comment telling us what city you're watching from, we want to see how far Elena's story reaches. And hit subscribe, because what comes next will change everything you think you know about age experience and who the deadliest person on any battlefield really is. The operations center at Forward Operating Base Sentinel smelled like burnt coffee and the particular anxiety that comes from sending young soldiers into terrain where people disappear. Elena stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, watching Lieutenant Webb brief his first independent patrol mission with the confidence of someone who'd never seen what happens when confidence meets reality. Sector 9 is clear, Webb announced, pointing at the map with a laser pointer like he was giving a TED Talk. Intelligence shows no enemy activity in 72 hours. We go in, we document the abandoned positions we extract. 4 hours tops. Elena's jaw tightened. She'd read the same intelligence reports. She'd also read between the lines the parts about disturbed Earth and grid coordinates that suggested recent digging, the refugee accounts of hearing vehicles at night, the weather patterns that made the forest perfect for concealment. Lieutenant, she said quietly. Every head in the room turned. Webb's expression shifted from confidence to irritation in half a second. Yes, Sergeant Reyes. Those grid coordinates put you in a natural choke point. Triple canopy forest, limited egress routes, high ground on 3 sides. It's a kill box. Webb smiled. Not a friendly smile. The smile of a 26-year-old West Point graduate who'd never been told he might be wrong. With all due respect, Sergeant, this isn't the Cold War anymore. We have drones, satellite imagery, signals, intelligence. If there were enemy forces in that sector, we'd know. Respectfully, sir, satellites can't see through that canopy, and the enemy knows that. The room got quiet. Colonel Marcus Hendricks, the battalion commander, cleared his throat. He was 52, close enough to retirement that he'd stopped taking risks with his career. Sergeant Reyes, Hendricks said, his voice carrying that careful tone officers use when they're about to be condescending. I appreciate your extensive experience, but Lieutenant Webb has planned this mission according to current doctrine and available intelligence. Unless you have specific, actionable intelligence to the contrary. Elena could feel every eye on her. She had specific intelligence, 32 years of knowing what terrain kills people, of reading maps, the way some people read faces, of understanding that the absence of evidence isn't the same as evidence of absence. But bad feeling wasn't actionable intelligence. Neither was, I've seen this before. No, sir. Just tactical assessment based on terrain analysis. Noted, Hendricks said in a tone that meant dismissed. Lieutenant Webb, continue your brief. Webb's smile widened slightly. As I was saying, we'll have a 4-vehicle convoy, 14 Rangers, full communication suite. Quick in, quick out. Nothing we haven't trained for. Elena's spotter, Corporal James Chen, leaned close to her. At 28, he was young enough to be her son, her dead son specifically, which was a thought she didn't let herself finish. Chen had been her spotter for 6 months and had learned to read her silences. You really think it's a trap? He whispered. I think young lions walk into kills because they don't know what hunger looks like yet. So what do? We. Elena looked at him. You do nothing. You stay here and keep your career intact. And you, I'm going to requisition a vehicle for equipment maintenance and happen to be in the general area, for training observation purposes. Chen's eyes widened. That's unauthorized. I'm aware. If Hendricks finds out, he can add it to my file. It's a thick file. One more page won't matter. The briefing broke up 20 minutes later. Webb's team loaded into Humvees with the casual efficiency of men who believed their training made them invincible. Elena watched from the motor pool, already in full kit, her M2010 enhanced sniper rifle secured in its case. The weapon weighed 17 pounds empty, kicked like an angry mule, and required upper body strength most younger snipers struggled with. At 55, Elena's shoulder ached just looking at it. She carried it anyway. Reyes, she turned. Staff Sergeant Kyle Morrison stood behind her, arms full of ammunition crates. Morrison was 34 solid, one of the few NCOs who treated her like a peer instead of a relic. Morrison, you're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you? Define stupid. Following Webb's patrol without authorization because you think he's walking into an ambush. Then no, I'm not thinking of doing that. Morrison set down the crates. You're a terrible liar. It's a character flaw. Elena. He used her first name, which meant he was serious. You pull an unauthorized op and it goes wrong, they'll court-martial you. If it goes right, they'll still probably court-martial you. Either way, you're done. I'm already done, Kyle. They've been trying to push me into retirement for 2 years. Desk job training, posting anything to get me out of the field, because apparently there's an expiration date on competence now. That's not... Yes, it is. Elena picked up her rifle case. How old were you when you made Staff Sergeant? 29. I was 27. How many deployments have you done? 7. I'm on my 14th. How many confirmed enemy kills do you have? Morrison hesitated. That's classified for me. It's classified for me too, but my number's higher than yours. A lot higher. And yet somehow I'm the one who gets called grandma in briefings and told to step aside for the young talent. So this is about ego. This is about 12 kids walking into terrain that screams ambush, led by an officer who thinks his degree matters more than pattern recognition. Elena hefted the rifle case. I spent 30 years learning how to read ground. That forest is wrong, Kyle. I can feel it. Your feelings aren't intel. No. But my feelings have kept a lot of people breathing who'd be dead if they'd trusted intel over instinct. Morrison studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed and pulled a radio from his belt. Take this. Encrypted channel. If things go sideways, you call me first. Not command. Me. I'll find a way to spin it as training oversight or something. Elena took the radio. You're risking your career for me. No, I'm providing backup for one of the best snipers I've ever seen, who's probably right about this being a bad situation. He paused. Also, you saved my life in Syria, so we're even. I pulled you behind cover. Anyone would have done it. You carried me 300 meters under fire with a sucking chest wound and called in air support while keeping my blood inside my body. Anyone wouldn't have done that. You did. Elena didn't have a response to that. She just nodded once and headed for her vehicle. Chen was already waiting in the passenger seat. I told you to stay here, Elena said. You told me I should stay here. You didn't order me. There's a difference. Chen. You need a spotter. I'm your spotter. This isn't a discussion. He held up his rangefinder and spotting scope. Besides, someone needs to document whatever insane shots you're about to make so they can't say it didn't happen. There won't be any shots. This is just observation. Right. And I'm just here for the scenic mountain views. Elena almost smiled. Almost. She started the engine instead. They departed the base 17 minutes after Webb's convoy, following the same route, but hanging back far enough to avoid detection. The morning fog was lifting, revealing the kind of landscape that made terrain analysts nervous, endless forest broken by ravines and ridgelines, 1,000 places to hide, 1,000 ways to die. Talk to me about the team, Elena said as they drove. Webb's Rangers. What's their experience level? Chen pulled out his tablet. Average age is 23. Youngest is 19. That's Private Marcus Dunn, just finished advanced training. Oldest is Specialist Ahmed Patel at 29. Average deployment time is 18 months. 3 of them have never seen combat. 3. Webb's one of them. This is his first patrol mission as team leader. Elena's hands tightened on the steering wheel. They gave him a team with 3 combat virgins and sent them into terrain I wouldn't walk through with a full platoon. To be fair, the intelligence does say. Intelligence said Afghanistan was stable. Intelligence said Iraq had WMDs. Intelligence is written by people staring at computer screens who've never felt what happens when the ground you're standing on suddenly becomes someone's targeting solution. Chen didn't argue. He'd learned months ago that when Elena talked about feeling terrain, she wasn't being mystical. She was processing thousands of micro-observations, sightlines, vegetation patterns, natural cover, old fighting positions into a tactical picture that took most analysts hours to develop. She did it automatically now, the way concert pianists read music. They stopped 3 kilometers from Webb's insertion point. Elena pulled off the main road onto a logging trail that wasn't on any official map, but that she'd noted during previous patrols. Good snipers knew their ground. Great snipers knew ground that wasn't officially their ground yet. "We hump from here," she said, already pulling on her pack. 2 clicks north puts us on the ridge overlooking their route. We can observe the entire valley from there. And if Webb spots us? He won't. He's not looking for friendly forces. That's his first mistake. They moved through the forest like ghosts. Chen had been trained by Elena, which meant he knew how to step on roots instead of soil, how to avoid dry leaves, how to move through vegetation without disturbing the natural patterns that screamed human to anyone actually looking. Elena moved even quieter, her body memory of 3 decades making silence automatic. The ridgeline appeared after 40 minutes of careful movement. Elena immediately dropped prone behind a fallen log rifle already coming up. Chen settled beside her with his spotting scope scanning the valley below. "Jesus," he whispered. The valley was textbook perfect ambush terrain. Webb's route took him straight through the center, a natural choke point with high ground on 3 sides, thick vegetation for concealment, and exactly 2 viable exit routes. Someone had cleared subtle firing lanes through the underbrush, not enough to be obvious, but enough to give shooters clear sight lines. Old shell casings glinted in the morning light missed during previous police calls. "How many do you count?" Elena asked, her scope already tracking movement Chen hadn't spotted yet. "Movement, I don't wait. North Ridge, 300 meters. Is that observation post? 2 personnel. They've been there at least 12 hours based on the trash pile." Elena's scope moved. "Southeast corner in the tree line, machine gun nest. Camouflage is good, but they forgot to mask the barrel. And west side behind that boulder formation, mortar position. Probably 2 tubes. They're set up for plunging fire into the valley floor." Elena's voice was flat clinical, the emotion locked down in some place she'd learned to build after watching too many people die. "This isn't an abandoned position. This is a prepared ambush site waiting for targets. We need to call Webb, tell him to abort. He won't believe us. We're not supposed to be here, we don't have official reconnaissance, and I'm the old lady who sees ghosts in empty forests." Elena keyed her radio, the encrypted one Morrison had given her, not the official command net. "Sentinel 6, this is Reyes. You reading me?" Morrison's voice came back immediately. "Go ahead. I need you to get a message to Webb's patrol. Tell them to hold position and wait for updated intelligence." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that he's about to walk into a platoon-sized ambush element in prepared positions with overlapping fields of fire." Silence. Then, "Elena, I can't call an abort on an active mission based on your visual observation from an unauthorized position. You know that." "Then what can you do?" "I can, have a radio malfunction that delays their insertion by 20 minutes while we troubleshoot. Buy you time to gather actual photographic evidence that command will accept. 20 minutes might not be..." The radio squawked. Different channel. Webb's voice young and confident. "Sentinel 6, this is Ranger 2-1. We're at phase line Alpha beginning insertion. All elements report ready." Chen looked at Elena. Her face was stone. "Reyes." Morrison's voice. "What do you want me to do?" Elena watched through her scope as Webb's 4 Humvees rolled to a stop at the valley entrance. 12 young men dismounting, checking weapons, forming up in patrol order. Private Marcus Dunn, 19 years old, never seen combat, laughing at something another ranger said. Specialist Patel scanning the tree line, professional, careful, but looking at the wrong angles because he didn't know what right looked like yet. Create that radio malfunction, Elena said, but it's not going to stop them. They're already committed. So what's the play? Elena chambered around. The M2010's bolt action was smooth, precise, the mechanical sound of a weapon built for one purpose. The play is I do what I've always done. I watch over people who don't know they need watching. And if this goes bad, I remind everyone why snipers with 30 years of trigger time are still breathing. Elena. She switched off the radio. Chen stared at her. We're really doing this. One sniper against a platoon-sized element. We're not doing anything. You're observing and documenting. I'm intervening if necessary. Elena's scope tracked Webb as he led his team into the valley. And pray that it's not necessary. But she knew it would be. She'd known since she saw those grid coordinates on the map. Some things you just feel in your bones when you've been doing this long enough. The weight of bad terrain, the smell of a situation about to go wrong, the particular quality of silence that means people are holding their breath and waiting for blood. Webb's Rangers moved deeper into the valley. Professional spacing weapons ready all the right tactical movements. They looked good. They looked trained. They looked exactly like every other young soldier who died, because looking good wasn't the same as being experienced enough to know when looking good didn't matter. Elena's breathing slowed. Her heart rate dropped. 32 years of training taking over, putting her body into the state where milliseconds felt like minutes, and impossible shots became geometry problems with lethal solutions. Range to first observation post, she asked quietly. Chen did the math. 840 meters. Wind is... I know what the wind is doing. Elena could read it in the tree movement, feel it on her face, calculate the drift automatically. What I need to know is if you're ready to watch something that's going to be in your nightmares. What are you... The forest exploded. Machine gun fire tore through Webb's position from 3 directions simultaneously. The sound was enormous heavy weapons, coordinated fire, the carefully planned violence of professionals who'd done this before. Rangers dove for cover that didn't exist. Rounds snapped through air where bodies had been microseconds before. Private Dunn went down immediately. Not wounded. Down. The way people go down when physics removes them from existence. Specialist Patel took 3 rounds across the chest. His body armor stopped them, but the impact threw him backward into a ravine. Webb was screaming into his radio. Contact, contact, we are under automatic fire, drowned out the rest. His radio went dead. Shrapnel, probably, or a round through the handset. Elena's scope was already tracking. She'd spotted the machine gunner on the north ridge first, the idiot who'd forgotten to mask his barrel. Amateur mistake. The kind of mistake that gets you killed by people who don't make mistakes. Range, she said calmly, while Chen hyperventilated beside her. 840 wine 3/4 value angle is Jesus Christ, they're dying down there. Range, wind, angle, now. Chen's training took over. His voice steadied. 840 meters, wind right to left 7 miles per hour, 3/4 value. Angle, minus 12 degrees. Temperature dropping, barometric pressure. Got it. Elena's finger found the trigger. The machine gunner was firing in controlled bursts, professional keeping his barrel from overheating. He'd probably killed Dunn, might have hit Patel, was definitely about to kill more of Webb's Rangers unless someone stopped him. Someone did. Elena's first shot of the deployment, after 8 months of silence, traveled through 840 meters of air that was trying to kill its velocity, pushed through vegetation that wasn't supposed to exist in ballistic tables, and arrived at its destination with enough remaining energy to remove the machine gunner from the equation permanently. The M2010's recoil slammed into Elena's shoulder. 55-year-old bone and muscle absorbed 17 pounds of weapon firing, a round designed to reach out and touch people at ranges where most soldiers couldn't even see their targets. Pain blossomed. Old injury re-aggravated. She ignored it. Hit, Chen confirmed through his scope voice shaking. Holy shit, that's how did you... Next target. Mortar position west side. They're about to bracket the Rangers with HE. I need range and wind. The mortars are behind that boulder. You can't even see them from here. I can see the bipod legs. That's enough. Range. 1,200 meters. Closer to 1180. Your rangefinder's off in this humidity. 1180 meters wind. Elena was already adjusting. The mortar crew was good. They'd stayed hidden during the initial ambush, waiting for the right moment to drop high explosive into what was left of Webb's team. But good wasn't the same as invisible. Not to someone who'd been hunting people for 3 decades. She fired. The shot was impossible. Not difficult. Impossible. Through vegetation at an angle that required calculating both gravity drop and the curvature of her bullet's path against a target she couldn't fully see at a range, where her weapon wasn't technically accurate anymore. The round hit the mortar tube itself. The impact of a supersonic bullet against metal created a shower of sparks. Then the mortar round they'd been loading detonated. The explosion was visible from Elena's position, a flash of orange fire and black smoke that erased the boulder formation and everyone behind it. Chen was staring at her. That's not possible. That shot is not possible. It's probability, not possibility. The math said it would work. The math was right. Elena was already tracking the next target. Her shoulder was screaming now, old rotator cuff injury that had ended her special operations career, threatening to end this operation too. She breathed through it. How many Rangers still mobile? I count. Chen's voice broke. 7. Maybe 8. Webb's wounded. Sergeant Morrison is wait. Morrison's not on this patrol. Different Morrison. David Morrison, 24 years old. This is his second deployment. Elena had memorized every Ranger in Webb's team before the briefing ended. She always did. He's trying to establish a perimeter with 4 men against 40-plus enemies. They have maybe 90 seconds before they're overrun. We need to call for support. Support is 30 minutes out. They'll be dead in 3 minutes. Now give me targets or get out of the way and let me work. Chen's hands shook as he adjusted his spotting scope. Enemy squad leader northeast corner moving to flank, 930 meters. Elena found him. Young, confident, moving like he thought he'd already won. He was shouting orders, repositioning his squad for the final assault. Good tactics. Would have worked against anyone else. She fired. The squad leader dropped. His squad froze, suddenly leaderless, trying to figure out where death was coming from. They looked at the valley floor at the tree line anywhere except 200 meters to their rear, where a 55-year-old woman with reading glasses in her pocket was systematically disassembling their ambush. Heavy weapons team South Ridge. They're setting up a PKM. Chen's voice was steadier now, falling into the rhythm of combat. 1,050 meters. Scene. The PKM team was good. They'd moved during the chaos, repositioning for a better angle on the surviving Rangers. The gunner was loading a belt, his assistant watching their flank. Both professionals. Both about to learn that professionals die too when the math is against them. Elena adjusted for the range, the wind that had shifted slightly, the angle that was steeper now. Her shoulder felt like someone was driving nails through the joint. She fired anyway. The round hit the assistant first. Bad luck for him. He'd moved at the wrong moment. The gunner had 1 second to understand what was happening before Elena's next shot arrived. She'd cycled the bolt without thinking, muscle memory of 10,000 repetitions, making reload automatic. 2 shots, 2 hits, 2 more enemies who wouldn't be killing Webb's Rangers. They're pulling back, Chen said, disbelief in his voice. It is. The enemy they're actually retreating. How many did you? 5 confirmed, 3 more probable. Elena's scope swept the valley looking for threats. But they're not retreating. They're repositioning. Someone down there is smart enough to realize there's a sniper in play and they're adjusting their tactics. We should call it in now. Let command know. Call it in and say that I made 5 shots in 90 seconds at ranges that shouldn't be possible while operating from an unauthorized position that'll end with me in handcuffs and Webb's team still surrounded. Elena found what she was looking for. Enemy commander had to be moving between positions with a radio. Range to that officer with the radio. Chen followed her sightline. 1,100 meters. Elena, he's behind tree cover. You can't... There's a 6-inch gap between those trunks. I can see his shoulder. That's enough. You're going to thread a shot through a 6-inch gap at 1,100 meters. I'm going to try. If I miss, he gets to keep breathing. If I hit his unit, loses command and control, which buys Webb time to call for extraction. Elena settled the crosshairs. Her shoulder was beyond pain, now entering the realm of structural damage that would require surgery. After this shot. Maybe 2 more. Then she'd deal with consequences. Wind call. Right to left 6 miles per hour. Temperatures dropped 3 degrees. That'll affect your... I know. Elena's breathing slowed. Heart rate dropping into the zone where the world narrowed to geometry and ballistics and the space between heartbeats where triggers got pulled. Spotter ready. Ready. She fired. The shot was poetry. The kind of shot that makes instructors shake their heads and say, "It's impossible," then show the video and watch students understand that impossible just means nobody they knew had done it yet. The round traveled through 100 meters of air that wanted to kill it, slipped through a gap in the trees that physics said shouldn't work, and found the enemy commander's shoulder, with enough energy remaining to spin him completely around before he dropped. The enemy force faltered. No commands. No coordination. Just individual units suddenly aware that someone out there was killing their leaders, and they didn't know where it was coming from. "Command net's going crazy," Chen said one ear on the radio. "Webb's calling for emergency extraction. Battalions scrambling QRF. They're asking who's providing sniper support because all their assets are accounted for. Tell them nothing. We don't exist." Elena, Chen. She looked at him directly for the first time since the shooting started. "If they know we're here, they know I disobeyed orders. They court-martial me. I'm fine with that. But they also pull me off this ridge, and who watches over Webb's team while they wait for extraction? Those boys have maybe 12 minutes before the enemy reorganizes and tries again. 12 minutes where the only thing keeping them breathing is me putting rounds downrange from a position nobody knows about. So we stay quiet, we keep shooting, and we let command think they have guardian angels they don't need to understand." Chen stared at her, then nodded once. "Understood. Good. Now find me more targets. We've got work to do." The next 8 minutes were mathematics and murder. Elena worked through the enemy force with surgical precision, prioritizing threats by how fast they could kill Rangers. Heavy weapons first, squad leaders second, anyone with a radio third. She fired 13 more shots. 11 confirmed hits. 2 misses, 1 because the target moved at exactly the wrong moment, 1 because her shoulder finally spasmed and pulled the shot left. Chen called ranges and wins, documented every shot, and tried not to think too hard about the fact that he was watching someone turn human beings into physics problems, with solutions that ended in body bags. By the time the quick reaction force arrived, 3 helicopters loaded with Rangers who'd expected to fight their way in the enemy force had dissolved. The survivors had fled into the forest, leaving their dead and wounded behind, carrying the story of an invisible sniper who could reach out across impossible distances and end lives with mathematical certainty. Webb's team evacuated with 7 men wounded, 2 dead. 5 survivors who weren't hit at all, including Webb himself, who'd spent the entire ambush on the radio calling for help, while Sergeant Morrison and 4 other Rangers formed a perimeter with their bodies. Elena and Chen disappeared before the helicopters landed. They humped back to their vehicle, drove a different route back to base, and arrived 40 minutes after the QRF, dirty and tired and officially not present at any recent engagements. Morrison found Elena in the armory cleaning her rifle. Her shoulder was swollen to twice its normal size. She could barely lift her right arm. "You need medical," he said quietly. "I need to finish this weapons maintenance." Elena, later Kyle. He sat down across from her. "Command's investigating. They know someone provided sniper support. The ballistic evidence is undeniable. .308 rounds from elevated position ranges that match nothing in their mission profile. They'll figure it out eventually, or they won't. Either way, 12 boys came home tonight who wouldn't have otherwise. 10 boys. 2 didn't make it." Elena's hands stopped moving. For just a moment, her mask cracked. Their names. Private Marcus Dunn. Specialist Ahmed Patel. 19 and 29. Dunn had never seen combat. Patel was getting married in 3 months. Elena's voice was flat again, emotion locked away. I couldn't shoot fast enough. You saved 10 lives against a force that size from that range while operating alone. Elena, what you did today is going to be studied in sniper schools for the next 20 years. What I did today was get 2 kids killed because I wasn't in position fast enough to stop the opening volley. She resumed cleaning her rifle. And tomorrow someone will probably figure out it was me, and I'll face charges for unauthorized operations, disobeying direct orders, and making my battalion commander look like an idiot for ignoring terrain analysis from someone with 3 decades of experience. Would you do it again? Knowing the cost? Elena looked up at him. Her eyes were hard. Every time. Because 10 families get to see their sons again. And yeah, 2 families are planning funerals. But if I hadn't been there, 12 families would be planning funerals. Math's simple, Kyle. 10 is better than 12. That's cold. That's professional. I don't have the luxury of being emotional about outcomes. I just make the best decisions I can with the information I have and live with the consequences. She holstered the cleaning rod. Now, are you going to report me, or did you come here for a different reason? Morrison pulled a folder from his jacket. Chen's spotter notes. Every shot documented. Ranges, conditions, targets, outcomes. He wanted you to have them before I submit my official report. What's your official report going to say? That we had an unknown sniper element providing overwatch. Possibly contractor, possibly allied forces, possibly friendly unit that happened to be in the area. Investigation ongoing. He stood. That gives you maybe 48 hours before someone with enough rank to care starts asking questions that lead back to you. Use them wisely. After he left, Elena sat alone in the armory staring at Chen's notes. 18 shots fired, 16 confirmed kills, 2 misses, ranges from 840 meters to 200 meters. Conditions that made every shot a violation of what rifles were supposed to be able to do and what human beings were supposed to be capable of. Her shoulder throbbed. She'd need surgery, probably end her career. She was fine with that. 55 was old for field operations anyway. The young lions like Webb could take over, learn through experience and mistakes the things she'd tried to teach them before they decided she was obsolete. But first, she needed to write 2 letters. To families of Private Marcus Dunn and Specialist Ahmed Patel. Letters that wouldn't be official, wouldn't go through command, would just be 1 professional to 2 families explaining that their sons had died fast, hadn't suffered, had been honored to serve. The lies you tell to make grief bearable. She'd written 63 such letters over her career. 63 times where being the best sniper in NATO hadn't been enough to keep someone breathing. 63 reminders that mathematics only works when you're in position before the shooting starts. Elena Reyes picked up her pen and started writing. Because that's what professionals do. They take their failures as personally as their successes. They don't celebrate the 10 they saved when 2 died who shouldn't have. And they keep working, keep training, keep trying to make the next generation good enough that someday maybe someone will make all 18 shots instead of 16. Outside the armory, the base was celebrating. Webb's team had survived an ambush that should have killed them all. Someone nobody knew who had performed miracles with a rifle. Young Rangers were alive who'd been seconds from death. Tomorrow the questions would start. The investigation, the consequences. Tonight Elena just wrote letters and pretended her shoulder didn't feel like it was on fire and tried not to calculate how many more shots she might have left before age and injury made the mathematics impossible to overcome. The answer was probably 0. She wrote the letters anyway. The letters were still drying on her desk when Colonel Hendricks walked into the armory at 0600 hours. Elena didn't look up. She was field stripping her M2010 for the 3rd time, her right arm moving through muscle memory, even though every motion sent lightning through her shoulder. Sergeant Reyes. Sir. Where were you yesterday between 0900 and 1100 hours? Elena's hands didn't pause. Equipment maintenance run. Checked vehicle fluids, tested communications gear. Standard pre-deployment protocols. Alone. Corporal Chen accompanied me. Training observation. Hendricks walked closer. He wasn't a stupid man. Just a careful one. The kind of officer who'd learned that careers ended when you made waves, so you didn't make waves. Interesting. Because Lieutenant Webb's after-action report mentions sniper support from an elevated position approximately 3 kilometers from the engagement zone. Support that wasn't authorized, wasn't coordinated, and somehow managed to eliminate 18 enemy combatants at ranges our own sniper teams say are impossible. Sounds like Lieutenant Webb had a guardian angel, sir. Guardian angels don't leave 308 brass casings on ridgelines. Hendricks dropped an evidence bag on her work table. Inside were 3 spent cartridges still smelling of cordite. My investigative team found these. Match them to your weapon system. Want to explain that? Elena finally looked up. Her face was stone. With respect, sir, 308 NATO is standard issue for multiple weapon systems across multiple units. Those casings could have come from anywhere. Ballistic analysis says otherwise. The rifling marks match your barrel specifically. Hendricks leaned against the table. Elena, I'm trying to help you here. If you operated without authorization to save those Rangers, there are ways to spin that. Minimize the damage, but I need you to be honest with me. Honest. Elena set down her cleaning rod. All right, sir. Honestly, I told you that patrol was walking into an ambush. You ignored me. Lieutenant Webb ignored me. Everyone in that briefing room laughed when I raised tactical concerns. 2 boys died because nobody wanted to listen to the old woman who's been reading terrain since before most of your staff could read at all. So you disobeyed direct orders. I didn't receive any orders about that patrol, sir. I wasn't assigned to it. I was conducting independent equipment maintenance. 3 kilometers from Webb's position. It's a big forest. Coincidences happen. Hendricks' jaw tightened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, sir. You're making this harder than it needs to be. 10 Rangers are alive right now who'd be dead if someone hadn't been watching. That's a win. Take the win. Stop looking for someone to punish because your intelligence assessment was wrong. My intelligence? Hendricks stopped, took a breath. This isn't about ego, Sergeant. Respectfully, sir, it absolutely is. Because if you admit I was right about that terrain, you have to admit you sent 12 kids into a kill zone against the advice of your most experienced NCO. And that looks bad in reports. Much easier to focus on my unauthorized presence than your authorized mistake. The silence stretched between them like razor wire. You're relieved of duty pending investigation, Hendricks said finally. Surrender your weapon. Confined to base. Someone from CID will want to interview you. Elena stood lifting her rifle. Her shoulder screamed. She ignored it. My weapon, sir? Hendricks took it, looked at looked at her. Was it worth it, your career for 10 lives? Ask those 10 Rangers, sir. See what they think the math is. After he left, Elena sat back down. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally catching up. She'd just effectively ended her military career. 32 years of service gone because she'd made the shots nobody else could make and saved the lives nobody else could save. The door opened again. Chen slipped inside, looking nervous. You shouldn't be here, Elena said. Morrison said they're going to court-martial you. Morrison talks too much. Elena, it's Sergeant Reyes when we're on base, Corporal. Chen flinched, then sat down across from her anyway. I turned in my spotter notes. Everything. Ranges, conditions, wind calls, target identification. All of it. Elena's eyes snapped to him. You did what? CID requested all documentation related to the engagement. I'm your spotter. I provided documentation. That documentation proves I was there. Proves I fired those shots. Chen, you just... I documented the truth. His voice was steady. 18 shots, 16 hits, ranges from 840 to 1 to 200 meters. Conditions that made every shot technically impossible. Results that saved 10 lives. He leaned forward. Let them court-martial you. Let them try to spin this as insubordination, because every sniper in NATO is going to read that report and understand what you did. They'll know that when it mattered, when lives were on the line, you made the shots. And then they'll ask why the hell command is punishing excellence. Chen. I also documented something else. He pulled out his phone, pulled up a video. I recorded Webb's briefing. The part where you identified that terrain as an ambush site, the part where Hendricks dismissed your assessment, the part where Webb called you grandma and everyone laughed. Elena stared at the video, then at Chen. You recorded a classified briefing. I recorded a training session for my personal development log. That's allowed under Regulation 351. And if that training session happens to show command ignoring tactical expertise from their most experienced NCO, well, that's just documentation of institutional problems that need addressing. You're risking your career. You risked your life. I'm just risking paperwork. Chen stood. They're going to try to bury you, make you the problem so they don't have to face their own mistakes. But that video goes to every news outlet I can find if they try, because the public deserves to know that we punish soldiers for saving lives while protecting officers who send kids into kill zones. Before Elena could respond, the door burst open. Lieutenant Webb stood there, his arm in a sling, his face bruised from where he'd hit the ground during the ambush. Behind him were 6 of his Rangers, including Sergeant Morrison. David Morrison, not Kyle, who was on crutches with his leg bandaged. Is it true? Webb demanded. Were you the sniper? Elena said nothing. Answer me, damn it. Everyone's saying you made those shots, that you disobeyed orders and followed my patrol and somehow managed to kill 18 enemies from 3 kilometers away. Webb's voice cracked. Is it true? Lieutenant, you should speak with your chain of command about fuck the chain of command. Webb was shaking. Dunn is dead. Patel is dead. 2 of my Rangers are dead because I walked them into an ambush you warned me about. And then you... He stopped, started again. You saved the rest of us. You made shots I didn't think were possible. You're being court-martialed for saving our lives. So I need to know. Was it you? Elena looked at the young Rangers behind him. They were all staring at her with something between awe and desperation. Kids who'd faced death and survived because someone they'd never taken seriously had been watching. Yes, she said quietly. It was me. Morrison. David Morrison spoke up. How did you make those shots I've been shooting for 6 years? My instructor said anything over 800 meters with that weapon system in those conditions is impossible. Your instructors were wrong. It's improbable, not impossible. There's a difference. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Mathematics wind reading thousands of repetitions and trusting that when the math says the shot will work, you pull the trigger and deal with consequences afterward. Webb walked closer. His eyes were red. He'd been crying. I got them killed. Dunn and Patel. I walked them into that valley because I thought I knew better than you. Because you're old and I'm young and I have a degree and you just have experience. And now they're dead. Now they're dead because enemy fighters killed them, Elena corrected. Not because you made mistakes. You made the decisions available to you with the information you had. Command made those decisions too. The enemy executed an ambush. That's what killed them. Not your age, not your inexperience. But you warned us. I gave an assessment. Command rejected it. That's how the chain works sometimes. You don't get to carry that guilt, Lieutenant. Save it for the decisions that actually matter. Elena's voice softened slightly. You kept your remaining Rangers alive during the firefight. You established a perimeter. You called for support. You did your job. The fact that 2 died isn't your failure. The fact that 10 lived is your success. That's bullshit. That's survival. You learn to live with the math or the math breaks you. 10 is better than 12. That's the equation. Learn it now before it destroys you later. One of the other Rangers spoke up, Private First Class Sarah Delgado, who'd taken shrapnel in the ambush but kept fighting. They're going to hang you for saving us, aren't they? Command is going to do what command does. That's above my pay grade. That's not right. Right and wrong don't matter in military justice. What matters is whether you followed orders and whether the outcome can be spun to protect careers higher up the chain. Elena stood ignoring the fire in her shoulder. Now all of you need to leave. Your presence here compromises your statements to CID. Webb didn't move. I'm going to testify. Tell them everything. That you warned us. That I ignored you. That you saved our lives. You'll tell them what happened during the engagement. Nothing more. You don't know what I did or didn't do before the shooting started. You were focused on your mission. That's your testimony. I'm not going to lie. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to be accurate. You didn't see me on that ridge. You didn't see me fire those shots. You experienced enemy casualties from an unknown position. That's factually true. Stick to facts. Morrison. David Morrison shook his head. They're going to railroad you. Make an example, and we're supposed to just let that happen. You're supposed to focus on recovering from your wounds and learning from what went wrong so the next patrol doesn't end the same way. Elena's voice went hard. I don't need protecting. I don't need testifying. What I need is for you to become better rangers so fewer people die next time. That's how you pay me back. Not with words, with competence. The rangers left slowly, reluctantly. Webb was the last one at the door. For what it's worth, he said quietly. I'm sorry. For the briefing. For calling you Grandma. For not listening. Are you sorry enough to listen next time someone with 30 years of experience tells you terrain is wrong? Yes. Then we're fine, Lieutenant. Go take care of your people. After they left, Chen started laughing. It wasn't a happy sound. What? Elena asked. You just gave probably the worst legal advice I've ever heard. Tell them nothing. Stick to facts. Don't testify on your behalf. You're making it easier for them to convict you. I'm making it easier for those rangers to live with what happened. They don't need to carry guilt about my choices. They need to carry lessons about their choices. Elena started gathering her personal items from the armory. Besides, CID doesn't need their testimony. They have ballistic evidence. They have brass casings. They have your spotter notes documenting every shot. The only question is whether Command wants to make me an example or quietly retire me. You think they'll go for quiet retirement? No. I embarrassed a full colonel, made him look incompetent in front of his battalion. They'll want blood. So what's the play? Elena smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. The play is I make them work for it. Force them to put everything on record. Every decision, every ignored warning, every piece of evidence that shows I saved lives Command would have lost. And then when they convict me anyway, that record exists. For the next young sniper who gets told she's too old. For the next experienced NCO who gets dismissed because officers think rank matters more than knowledge. You're building a case study. I'm building a cautionary tale. One that gets taught in leadership courses about the cost of ignoring subject matter experts. Elena picked up her patrol cap. Now you're going to leave before you get more involved in this than you already are. That's an order, Corporal. And if I refuse, then you'll have a very distinguished career as a civilian because they'll boot you out alongside me. Elena put a hand on his shoulder, her left hand since the right one wasn't working properly. You did good work on that ridge. Your wind calls were perfect. Your range estimates were accurate. You stayed calm under pressure. That's what makes a good spotter. Don't throw that away because you're loyal to someone who's already finished. Chen looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he just nodded and left. Elena was alone again. Her shoulder was swelling worse now, the joint inflamed to the point where she couldn't lift her arm above horizontal. She needed medical attention. Probably surgery. Definitely physical therapy that would take months. She ignored all of it and started writing her official statement for CID. Not the truth. The truth was complicated, messy, full of judgment calls that looked like insubordination on paper. She wrote what could be proven, what couldn't be denied, what forced Command to either admit she'd saved lives or explain why saving lives was wrong. The investigator arrived at 1400 hours. Captain Rachel Stone, Criminal Investigation Division, mid-30s. Smart eyes that saw details. She'd probably been an MP before CID. Had that particular quality of someone who'd learned to spot lies professionally. Sergeant Reyes. Captain. Stone sat down, opened her tablet. I'm investigating the unauthorized sniper engagement during Operation Valkyrie. Specifically, 18 enemy casualties from elevated position approximately 800 meters from forward operating base Sentinel during a time frame when all authorized sniper assets were accounted for elsewhere. I'm aware of the engagement, ma'am. Were you present at map coordinates November 37452 between 0900 and 1100 hours on the date in question? Elena considered carefully. The coordinates were accurate. Stone had done her homework. Lying would just make things worse. Yes, ma'am. Stone's expression didn't change. In what capacity? Unauthorized tactical observation. I assessed terrain prior to Lieutenant Webb's patrol and identified high-probability ambush indicators. When my assessment was dismissed, I conducted independent observation to validate or disprove my analysis. Independent observation with a sniper rifle. I don't conduct field operations without proper equipment, ma'am. Did you fire that weapon during the engagement? Yes, ma'am. How many rounds? 18. Targets. Enemy combatants actively engaging friendly forces. Stone made notes. Sergeant, you understand that you operated outside your area of responsibility without authorization against direct guidance from your chain of command and engaged enemy forces in a combat action that wasn't coordinated with battalion operations. Yes, ma'am. And you did this knowing it would likely end your career. I did this knowing 10 Rangers would die if someone didn't intervene. Career mathematics seemed less important than life mathematics. Stone actually smiled. Small. Brief. That's going to be a problem in court-martial proceedings. Nobility doesn't excuse violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I'm not claiming nobility, ma'am. I'm claiming tactical necessity. Command made decisions based on incomplete assessment. Those decisions put lives at risk. I acted to mitigate that risk. Whether that action violated regulations is for lawyers to determine. Whether that action saved lives is already proven. You're not making this easy. I'm making it accurate, ma'am. There's a difference. Stone closed her tablet, looked at Elena with something that might have been respect. For what it's worth, Sergeant, I've read your file. 32 years, 14 deployments, more confirmed kills than anyone in NATO. Congressional Medal of Honor that you refuse to discuss. Transfer from special operations under classified circumstances. You've saved more lives than most doctors. And now Command wants to end your career because you saved 10 more. Command wants to protect itself from embarrassment, ma'am. I'm just collateral damage in that process. Do you have anything else you want to add to your statement? Elena thought about it. About 32 years of watching young soldiers die because officers made mistakes. About the 2 letters on her desk for families who'd never see their sons again. About Webb's face when he understood his confidence had gotten people killed. Just one thing, ma'am. When they write up the charges, make sure they include the part about the 2 Rangers who died before I could engage. Dunn and Patel. Because if I'd been in position 5 minutes earlier, if my tactical assessment had been taken seriously during mission planning, those boys would still be breathing. That's the real violation here. Not that I acted without authorization, that I had to act without authorization because proper authorization would have meant 10 more families planning funerals. Stone stood. That's not going to help your case. I'm not trying to help my case, ma'am. I'm trying to make sure the next case doesn't happen. Someone needs to read these files and understand the cost of dismissing expertise because it comes from someone with silver in their hair instead of stars on their collar. After Stone left, Elena finally went to medical. The doctor took one look at her shoulder and immediately scheduled surgery. Rotator cuff completely torn, deltoid muscle damaged, nerve impingement. Probably career-ending even without the court-martial. How long have you been operating with this injury? The doctor asked. 8 years. Since the Prague incident. Prague? You're the sniper from Prague. The doctor's voice changed. The shot that wasn't supposed to be possible. The one they classified at levels that make flag officers nervous. I can neither confirm nor deny. You tore your rotator cuff making that shot, kept operating anyway, built scar tissue and compensation patterns that let you function but caused progressive damage. The doctor pulled up her x-rays. Every shot you've fired since Prague has made this worse. You should have had surgery 8 years ago. I had Rangers to train, missions to support. Surgery meant desk duty. Surgery meant keeping your shoulder functional. Now you'll be lucky if you can lift your arm at all after we repair this. The doctor started typing orders. You're scheduled for 600 tomorrow. Post-op recovery is 12 weeks minimum. Physical therapy after that. You'll never fire a precision rifle again." Elena nodded. She'd known. Had known since the ambush when her shoulder started spasming. Had fired anyway because 10 Rangers mattered more than one shoulder. "Thank you, doctor." "Don't thank me. Thank whatever stubbornness kept you functional this long. Most people would have washed out years ago with this injury." That night, Elena sat in her quarters and read the files Chen had compiled. Every shot documented, every calculation explained. Video evidence of the briefing where she'd been dismissed. Witness statements from Rangers she'd saved. It was a complete case for the defense. Would probably reduce her sentence from court-martial to administrative punishment. Might even let her retire with benefits instead of discharge under other than honorable conditions. She deleted it all. Not because she wanted punishment, because she wanted documentation that couldn't be erased. If she fought the charges and one command would classify everything. Bury the records. Make sure nobody could use her case as precedent. But if she lost, if she took the full punishment without fighting, then the record stayed public. Became part of military legal history. Existed as evidence for the next person who faced the same choice. Chen found her at 2300 hours, frantic. "What did you do?" "The files are gone. All my documentation, the video, everything. I secured them somewhere command can't reach. Somewhere they'll stay public record regardless of outcome." "Elena, that was your defense. That was my legacy. I don't need defense. I need those Rangers to learn. I need future snipers to see what's possible. I need officers to understand the cost of dismissing experience." She stood. "Tomorrow I have surgery. Day after that, court-martial proceedings begin. They'll convict me. They have to. And that conviction becomes case law. Becomes required reading in leadership courses. Becomes the cautionary tale about what happens when you ignore your best people because they don't fit your expectations. You're insane. I'm strategic. There's a difference." Elena picked up the letters she'd written. "Make sure these get to Dunn's and Patel's families. Not through official channels. Just make sure they know someone cared enough to explain what happened." Chen took the letters with shaking hands. "You're really doing this. You're really going to let them destroy you." "They're not destroying me, Corporal. They're creating a lesson that'll save lives long after I'm gone. That's a better legacy than medals." The next morning, Elena went into surgery. The anesthesia pulled her under while she was still counting backward from 10. Her last conscious thought was wondering if she'd made all 18 shots, if Dunn and Patel would still be alive, if being 5 minutes faster would have mattered. The answer was probably yes. She went under anyway, knowing that some mathematics couldn't be changed, only learned from. And somewhere in the base command center, Colonel Hendricks was reading reports and understanding that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his career, not ignoring Elena's tactical assessment, but forcing her to prove she'd been right. Because now the entire military would know. And knowing would change things. Whether he survived that change was above his pay grade. Whether Elena survived it was above hers. The only certainty was that 10 Rangers were breathing who wouldn't be otherwise. Sometimes that's the only math that matters. Elena woke up in recovery with her arm immobilized and a general standing at the foot of her bed. Not a colonel. Not even a brigadier. Major General Patricia Vance, 2 stars on her collar. Commander of Special Operations Command Europe. The woman who'd signed Elena's transfer papers 8 years ago after Prague. "Ma'am?" Elena's voice was rough from intubation. "Don't salute. You'll rip your stitches." Vance pulled up a chair. She was 58, silver hair cut, military short eyes that had seen things that didn't make it into official reports. "How's the shoulder?" "Surgeon says I'll never fire a precision rifle again." Surgeon's probably right. That rotator cuff was held together by scar tissue and spite. Vance opened a folder. "I read Captain Stone's investigation report. Also read your statement. You basically confessed to everything and provided zero defense." "Yes, ma'am." "You understand they're going to crucify you?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you're fine with that?" "The math works, ma'am. 10 Rangers breathing versus my career ending. Easy equation." Vance closed the folder. Looked at Elena with an expression that might have been respect, or might have been frustration. You always were terrible at politics. Prague proved that, refusing a direct order from a 3-star because the target was politically complicated and you had moral objections to eliminating a sitting government official. He was planning a massacre, ma'am. 1,700 civilians in a refugee camp. My shot would have stopped it. Your shot would have triggered an international incident, started a war we weren't ready to fight, created diplomatic consequences that would have taken a decade to resolve. Instead, he ordered the massacre 3 days later. 1,700 people died, but at least we avoided diplomatic consequences. The silence between them was sharp enough to draw blood. I didn't come here to relitigate Prague, Vance said finally. I came here because your court-martial starts in 6 hours, and you're about to become the poster child for everything wrong with military culture. The young lions at the Pentagon want to make an example, show that experience doesn't excuse insubordination, that 32 years of service doesn't grant immunity from consequences. They're not wrong, ma'am. They're completely wrong. But they have the power, and you have a hospital bed. Vance leaned forward. I can make this go away. 1 phone call. Reassign you to training command, full retirement benefits, honorable discharge. You disappear quietly and everyone moves on. In exchange for what? Your silence. No interviews. No tell-all books. No testimony about how command ignored your tactical assessment and got 2 Rangers killed. You take the deal, accept the retirement, and the military avoids a public relations nightmare about age discrimination and institutional incompetence. Elena thought about Dunn and Patel, about Webb's face when he realized his confidence had cost lives, about every young sniper who'd faced the same dismissal she had when they got too old to be taken seriously. No, ma'am. Elena, respectfully, ma'am, no. Because if I take that deal, nothing changes. Next year, there'll be another experienced NCO who gets ignored, another officer who thinks rank matters more than knowledge, another patrol that walks into terrain that screams danger because nobody listened to the person who'd been reading ground for 3 decades. I can't stop that, but maybe a public court-martial can. Maybe making this visible forces institutional change. Or maybe it just destroys you and changes nothing. Then at least I tried, ma'am. Vance stood. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. It's why you were the best operator in special operations. It's also why you're about to lose everything. I already lost everything that mattered 8 years ago when you transferred me out for refusing an illegal order. This is just paperwork. The Prague shot wasn't illegal. It was authorized at the highest levels. Authorization doesn't equal morality, ma'am. 1,700 civilians died because someone decided politics mattered more than lives. I've carried that for 8 years. This court-martial, this is easy compared to that weight. After Vance left, Elena stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about Prague, about the shot she'd refused, about the massacre that followed, about the nightmares where she made the shot and started a war versus the nightmares where she didn't make the shot and watched children die. There were no good options in Prague, just degrees of terrible. Same as now. The court-martial convened at 1400 hours in a conference room that smelled like fear and stale air. 3 officers on the panel, 2 colonels and a brigadier general. Captain Stone presenting the prosecution. Elena representing herself because she'd refused assigned counsel. Sergeant Reyes. The brigadier general began. You're charged with conduct unbecoming failure to obey orders and unauthorized engagement of enemy forces. How do you plead? Guilty on all counts, sir. The room went silent. Stone looked up from her notes, surprised. The panel members exchanged glances. You understand that guilty pleas on these charges will result in discharge and possible confinement, the general asked. Yes, sir. And you're entering these pleas voluntarily without coercion? Yes, sir. Then this tribunal will proceed to sentencing phase. Captain Stone, present your case. Stone stood. She looked uncomfortable. Sir, given the defendant's plea, the prosecution requests minimum sentencing guidelines. Sergeant Reyes's actions while unauthorized resulted in preservation of friendly forces and elimination of enemy threats. Her service record is exemplary. Captain. The general's voice was cold. You're prosecuting, not defending. Present the case against the defendant or I'll find someone who will. Stone's jaw tightened. Yes, sir. The prosecution maintains that Sergeant Reyes willfully disregarded the chain of command operated without authorization in a combat zone and engaged enemy forces outside her assigned area of operations. These actions, regardless of outcome, represent fundamental violations of military discipline. We recommend discharge under other than honorable conditions and confinement of 6 months. Elena felt nothing. She'd expected worse. Then the door opened and Lieutenant Webb walked in, still in his sling. Sir, I'm Lieutenant Marcus Webb. I request permission to provide testimony relevant to sentencing. The general frowned. This is highly irregular. Captain Stone, did you call this witness? No, sir. Then sit down, Lieutenant. This tribunal doesn't need... With respect, sir, this tribunal needs to hear what actually happened in that forest. Webb's voice was steady. Needs to understand that Sergeant Reyes is being punished for saving lives command would have lost, and I'm not leaving until you hear it. The general's face reddened. Lieutenant, you're dangerously close to contempt charges. Then add me to the docket, sir. Court-martial us both, because I'm the officer who ignored Sergeant Reyes's tactical assessment. I'm the one who walked 12 Rangers into a kill zone. I'm the reason Dunn and Patel are dead. If anyone should be in that chair, it's me. Elena spoke up. Lieutenant Webb, stand down. This isn't... Respectfully, Sergeant, shut up. Webb turned back to the panel. You want to talk about unauthorized actions? Let's talk about authorized stupidity. I had a briefing where the most experienced sniper in NATO told me that terrain was wrong, showed me the grid coordinates, explained the danger, and I laughed at her. Called her grandma in front of 23 officers, dismissed her assessment because she's 55 and I'm 26, and apparently age matters more than expertise in today's military. One of the colonels leaned forward. Lieutenant, your commanding officer made the final decision on that mission. Based on my recommendations, sir, based on my assurances that the terrain was secure, based on intelligence that said exactly what I wanted it to say because I was too arrogant to consider I might be wrong. Webb's voice cracked. 2 of my Rangers died. 10 more would have if Sergeant Reyes hadn't violated every regulation in the book to save them. And now you're going to punish her for that, for being right when we were wrong, for making impossible shots that kept kids breathing when our decisions would have killed them. The general's voice was ice. Lieutenant, this tribunal is not a venue for airing grievances about command decisions. Then what is it a venue for, sir? Because it looks like a venue for protecting careers by destroying the one person who had the guts to do what was necessary. When necessary meant breaking rules. Webb pulled papers from his jacket. I brought something. Statements from all 10 Rangers who survived that ambush. Every single one says the same thing. They're alive because Sergeant Reyes made 18 shots that nobody thought were possible. 18 shots that eliminated the threats killing us. 18 mathematical miracles that your prosecution is calling violations. Stone stood. Sir, these statements are devastating to your case, Captain. Webb dropped the papers on the table. Yeah, they are. Because you can't explain away ballistic evidence that proves excellence. Can't spin this as insubordination when the outcome was lives saved. Can't make an example of someone whose example is exactly what the military should be celebrating instead of prosecuting. The room exploded. The general was shouting for order. Stone was objecting. The other panel members were trying to restore procedure. Through it all, Elena sat quiet, watching Webb burn his career to ash, defending hers. Finally, the general's voice cut through the chaos. Lieutenant Webb, you're dismissed. This tribunal will not be intimidated by emotional appeals. Good, because I'm not making an emotional appeal. I'm making a factual one. Webb walked to Elena's table, stood beside her. Sergeant Reyes violated regulations. She admits it. She's guilty. But if you punish her without acknowledging why she had to violate regulations, without examining the command failures that made her violations necessary, then you're not dispensing justice. You're just protecting the institution at the expense of the individuals who make it function. The general stood. This tribunal is in recess, 1 hour. When we return, Lieutenant Webb will not be present or he'll face his own charges. Understood. Understood, sir. Webb didn't move. After the panel left, Elena looked at Webb. You just destroyed your career for me. No, I just tried to do the right thing for once, since apparently I'm terrible at it. He sat down heavily. Dunn was 19. He'd never even kissed a girl. Told me the night before the patrol he was nervous about his first combat mission. I told him it would be fine. It would be routine. Just a walk in the woods. Lieutenant, Patel was getting married, had the ring in his pocket, was going to propose on leave next month. Showed me pictures of his girlfriend. She was beautiful. He was so excited. Webb's voice was barely above a whisper. I keep seeing their faces. Keep hearing Dunn calling for his mom while he was bleeding out. Keep thinking about that girl who's never going to get that proposal, and you're sitting here taking punishment for saving the ones I didn't get killed. You didn't kill them. The enemy killed them. The enemy pulled the triggers. I put them in position to be targets. Webb looked at her. How do you live with it? The ones you couldn't save. Elena was quiet for a long moment. You count the ones you did save. Do the math. Make sure the math stays positive. And when it doesn't, when the losses outnumber the saves, you write letters to families and you carry the weight and you try to do better next time. Does it get easier? No, but you get stronger at carrying it. Chen appeared in the doorway. Behind him were the other Rangers from Webb's team. All of them. Morrison on crutches. Delgado with her arm bandaged. 6 more with various injuries. All in dress uniforms. We're testifying, Morrison said. All of us. Stone intercepted them. The tribunal didn't call you. You can't just... We're volunteering testimony that's allowed under tribunal procedures. Article 39 rules for courts martial. Morrison pulled out a tablet. I looked it up. You want to stop us, Captain, you'll need a direct order from the panel. This is inappropriate. So is prosecuting someone for saving our lives. Delgado's voice was hard. Ma'am, with all respect, we're going in there and we're telling them exactly what happened. They can listen or they can add 11 more people to the court-martial docket. Their choice. Stone looked at Elena. Did you coordinate this? I specifically told them not to testify. Apparently, I'm not good at giving orders people follow. No, Chen said. You're just good at giving orders people survive. There's a difference. When the tribunal reconvened, the general's expression said he'd expected the room to be empty. Instead, it was packed. 11 Rangers. Morrison. Kyle Morrison standing at the back. 3 junior officers from other units. A reporter from Stars and Stripes who'd somehow gotten access. What is this? The general demanded. Webb stood. This is testimony, sir, from every Ranger who survived the engagement. Volunteered under Article 39. You can refuse to hear it, but that refusal becomes part of the public record. Your choice. The general looked at the reporter, then at the Rangers, then at Elena, who was sitting quietly with her immobilized arm and her guilty plea and her complete lack of defense. Proceed, he said finally, but be brief. Morrison went first. I'm Sergeant David Morrison. I was in that kill zone. When the ambush started, I thought we were all dead. Had made peace with it. Then enemy combatants started dropping. Machine gunner that was tearing us apart went silent. Mortar crew that was about to bracket us with chi disappeared. Every leader coordinating their attack got eliminated within 90 seconds. We didn't know what was happening, just knew that something was killing them faster than they could kill us. Delgado was next. I took shrapnel at 0947 hours. Was bleeding badly. Thought I was done. Then I heard their machine guns stop. Heard them shouting in panic. Heard their chain of command falling apart. Whatever was happening, it was giving us time. Time to apply pressure to wounds. Time to establish a perimeter. Time to call for help. That time came from someone eliminating threats at ranges we couldn't even see. Someone command is now prosecuting for buying us that time. One by one they testified. Clinical, factual, devastating. Each Ranger describing the moment they'd accepted death, followed by the moment death arrived for the enemy instead. each one acknowledging they'd be in body bags if someone hadn't been watching from a position nobody knew about. Webb was last. I'm the officer who led that patrol. I'm the one who ignored tactical warnings, who dismissed expertise because it came from someone who didn't fit my expectations, who got 2 Rangers killed and would have gotten 10 more killed if Sergeant Reyes hadn't violated every regulation to save us. He paused. You want to know the real violation here? It's not that she acted without authorization. It's that she had to. It's that our system values obedience over outcome, process over lives, checking boxes over saving Rangers. And if you convict her, you're telling every experienced NCO in the military that when they see disasters coming, they should stay quiet and let disasters happen, because trying to prevent disasters is somehow worse than letting them unfold. The silence after Webb finished was absolute. Finally, the general spoke. The tribunal will deliberate. Sergeant Reyes, you and your witnesses are dismissed. Elena stood. Her shoulder was screaming, but she kept her face neutral. Outside the conference room, the Rangers surrounded her like a protective wall. You shouldn't have testified, she said. Yeah, well, you shouldn't have saved our lives, Morrison shot back. So we're all guilty of doing things we shouldn't have done. Difference is, yours kept us breathing. They waited 3 hours. Elena dozed in a chair, pain medication from surgery making her drowsy. Chen stayed awake beside her, constantly checking his phone for updates that weren't coming. You think they'll go easy? He asked quietly. No. They'll go hard. Make an example. That's the point. The point of what? Of forcing institutional change. You can't fix a system from inside when everyone's invested in maintaining it. You fix it by breaking it so badly they have to rebuild. This court-martial, when they convict me, despite all that testimony, despite the evidence, despite everything, it becomes case law. Becomes documentation that the system is broken. And documentation is the first step to fixing. That's cold comfort when you're in Leavenworth. Leavenworth's minimum security for military prisoners is basically a college campus with bars. I've survived worse. The tribunal called them back at 1800 hours. Elena walked in expecting the worst and preparing to accept it with dignity. The general's face was unreadable. Sergeant Elena Reyes, this tribunal has reviewed all evidence and testimony. We find you guilty of all charges as entered in your plea. However, given the extraordinary circumstances of your actions and the testimony of the Rangers you preserved, this tribunal is issuing the following sentence. Elena braced herself. You are hereby reduced in rank to private. You will forfeit all pay and allowances for a period of 6 months. You will be confined to base for 90 days. Upon completion of confinement and pending medical clearance, you will be reassigned to Training Command, where you will develop curriculum for advanced sniper tactics. After 12 months of satisfactory service in that capacity, you will be eligible for retirement with full benefits. Elena heard the words, but they didn't make sense. Not confinement, not discharge. A slap on the wrist and reassignment to exactly what she'd been trying to achieve for 8 years, a platform to teach. Do you understand this sentence? The general asked. Yes, sir. Good. Because let me be clear about something. Private Reyes. The general's voice dropped. This sentence is not mercy. It's not forgiveness. You violated fundamental principles of military discipline, but you did so in service of preserving life when your chain of command failed to prevent loss of life. That paradox is the only reason you're not in Leavenworth right now. Don't mistake pragmatism for approval. Yes, sir. Dismissed. Outside, the Rangers erupted in celebration. Webb was grinning. Chen was laughing. Morrison was shaking his head in disbelief. Elena just stood there processing. You did it, Webb said. You actually did it. Survived a court-martial with basically a fine and job reassignment. That's unheard of. That's strategy, Chen corrected. She forced them to choose between destroying someone who saved lives or looking like monsters in public record. They chose the option that lets them save face. Kyle Morrison appeared from the crowd. General Vance made some calls, got the tribunal to focus on outcome over process, reminded them that prosecuting excellence sends the wrong message to the force. Elena looked at him. You knew about this. I knew Vance was working on it. Didn't know if she'd succeed. Apparently making you a private instead of a prisoner was the compromise. I'm 55 years old. I just got demoted to the lowest rank in the military. My shoulder's destroyed. I can't fire a rifle, and somehow this is victory. No, Morrison said quietly. This is survival. Victory comes next when you take that training command posting and turn it into the best sniper school in NATO. When you prove that age and experience matter more than rank in politics. When you teach the next generation to be better than we were. Elena thought about it. About 18 shots she'd made when everyone said they were impossible. About 2 she'd been too slow to make that haunted her anyway. About 32 years of proving that math worked better than arrogance. All right, she said finally. Let's teach them something they won't forget. Webb extended his hand. Thank you for saving us, for fighting this, for showing us what right looks like even when right is hard. Elena shook his hand with her left one since her right wasn't working. Thank me by becoming the officer who listens to his NCOs instead of dismissing them. That's the only thanks I want. Deal. As the crowd dispersed and Elena headed back to her quarters, Chen fell into step beside her. You're going to be insufferable as a private, aren't you? Absolutely. I've been waiting 32 years to not care about rank. Now I get to tell colonels they're wrong without worrying about career consequences. You're going to get written up constantly. Probably. But I'll be training snipers who learn from those write-ups. Teaching them that sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything, and you do it anyway because math matters more than medals. Chen smiled. You know what the Rangers are calling you now, the Ghost. Because you appeared out of nowhere, killed 18 enemies they couldn't see, and disappeared before anyone could figure out who saved them. I'm not a ghost. I'm just a private with a destroyed shoulder and a training command posting. You're a legend, whether you like it or not. Elena thought about Dunn and Patel, about the families receiving letters she'd written, about the weight she'd carry forever because 2 wasn't 18 and math didn't care about ratios when lives were involved. Legends are for people who forget the cost, she said quietly. I'm just someone who counted wrong and has to live with the math. But somewhere in the command center, officers were reading after-action reports and understanding that something had changed. That age wasn't expiration. That experience mattered. That dismissing expertise had consequences. Whether that understanding translated to institutional reform remained above Elena's pay grade, which was currently the lowest pay grade possible. But she'd survived. And surviving meant teaching. And teaching meant the next generation might do better. Sometimes that's the only victory that matters. The training command posting arrived 6 weeks after surgery while Elena was still in physical therapy, trying to relearn how to lift her right arm above her shoulder. The orders were simple: report to Fort Benning. Advanced Marksmanship Unit. Develop curriculum for experienced sniper personnel. Focus on unconventional engagement scenarios. What the orders didn't say was that every sniper instructor at Benning had read her court-martial transcripts, and half of them thought she should be in prison. Private Elena Reyes arrived at Benning on a Tuesday morning with her arm still in a brace and a reputation that preceded her like a warning siren. The unit commander, Lieutenant Colonel James Brennan, met her in his office with the enthusiasm of someone greeting a lawsuit. Private Reyes, he said her rank like it tasted bad. Or should I call you Sergeant or Master Sergeant hard to keep track when someone gets demoted 32 years into their career? Private works fine, sir. Good, because that's what you are now. Not an experienced operator, not a subject matter expert. A private who violated the chain of command and got lucky enough to save some lives in the process. Brennan dropped a folder on his desk. Your curriculum proposal was approved by command. I was overruled when I objected. So you're here. But understand something, I run this unit. You work for me. And if you pull any of the cowboy nonsense that got you court-martialed, I will personally ensure your retirement benefits disappear. Clear to? Crystal, sir. Your first class starts Monday. 12 students, All experienced snipers average 8 years and specialty minimum 50 confirmed kills each. They requested you specifically after reading about your engagement. They think you're some kind of legend. Brennan's expression made clear what he thought about that. Don't disappoint them more than you've already disappointed the institution. Elena took the folder and left without another word. Inside were the student files. 12 snipers from across NATO forces, American, British, German, Polish. All men. All between 25 and 35. All with combat records that would impress most generals. None of them had ever made a shot past 900 meters in actual combat conditions. She had 3 days to build a curriculum that would teach them what 32 years and a destroyed shoulder had taught her. 3 days to figure out how to pass on knowledge that couldn't be quantified in manuals or reduced to formulas. Chen found her in the range house that night, surrounded by ballistic tables and weather data and target solutions. You're supposed to be resting. Doctor said 12 weeks before full duty. Doctor said 12 weeks before I could fire a rifle. Teaching doesn't require firing. Elena marked another calculation on her notepad. How'd you find me? Morrison told me where they assigned you. Figured you'd be here obsessing over something instead of recovering properly. Chen sat down across from her. So what's the plan? How do you teach people to make impossible shots? You don't. You teach them that impossible is just probability dressed up in fear. Then you give them the math to calculate probability and the training to trust that math when their instincts scream, it's wrong. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Elena pushed her notes across the table. Look at these engagement ranges. Average successful sniper shot in modern combat is 600 to 800 meters. That's what gets taught. That's what gets trained. That's what becomes doctrine. But doctrine doesn't account for situations where 600 meters isn't enough, where the enemy's 900 meters out and closing, where your rangers are dying and conventional engagement ranges mean you're too far to help. So you're teaching extended range shooting. I'm teaching adaptive problem solving. Extended range is just one application. Elena pulled up a satellite image on her laptop. This is the terrain from Webb's engagement. Triple canopy forest. Variable winds, multiple elevation changes, target acquisition windows measured in seconds. Every shot I made that day violated at least 3 principles of conventional sniper doctrine, but they worked because I understood that doctrine is a starting point, not a limitation. Chen studied the image. How many instructors at Benning teach this approach? 0. Because teaching this approach requires admitting that sometimes experience matters more than curriculum. And institutions don't like admitting their curriculum might be incomplete. Elena closed the laptop. Which is why Brennan hates that I'm here. I'm living proof that following doctrine gets people killed sometimes. That's not a comfortable lesson for an institution built on doctrine. So you're going to make enemies. I already made enemies. Court-martial did that. Now I'm just going to teach people how to survive despite their enemies. The first class met Monday morning at 0600 hours. 12 snipers, all in immaculate uniforms, all studying Elena with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. She stood in front of them in her private's uniform with her arms still braced and her reputation hanging in the air like smoke. I'm Private Reyes. For the next 8 weeks, I'm going to teach you how to make shots you currently think are impossible. Some of you will succeed. Most of you will fail. All of you will be uncomfortable. She paused. Questions before we start. A British corporal raised his hand. With respect, ma'am. It's private, not ma'am. I got demoted. Use my rank. With respect. Private, your engagement report shows 18 shots at extended range. Our assessment is that report contains significant errors or exaggerations. The mathematics don't support those outcomes. Your name? Corporal Davies, British SAS. Corporal Davies, you're right. The mathematics don't support those outcomes under conventional assumptions. We're going to spend the next 8 weeks teaching you to question your assumptions. Next question. An American sergeant spoke up. Sergeant Miller, 75th Ranger Regiment. I read your court-martial transcript. You violated direct orders. Why should we learn from someone who doesn't respect the chain of command? Because respecting the chain of command and keeping Rangers alive are sometimes mutually exclusive. When you face that choice, you'll need to know how to make shots that buy you options. I'm here to teach those shots. Whether you respect me is irrelevant. Whether you survive is everything. Elena picked up a rifle case. Now, who wants to go to the range? They spent the first week on fundamentals, not shooting, calculating. Elena made them work through wind formulas without computers, made them estimate ranges without rangefinders, made them build ballistic tables from scratch using only paper and basic physics. This is basic training level work, Miller complained on day 3. We're experienced operators, we know this stuff. You know how to use tools that do this stuff, Elena corrected. What happens when your computer dies? When your rangefinder breaks? When you're making a shot where seconds matter and stopping to calculate means someone dies? She handed him a sheet of paper covered in numbers. You need to be able to do this math in your head while you're cold, tired, scared, and watching people die. So we practice until it's automatic. By the end of week 1, 3 students had requested transfer. Brennan approved all 3 immediately and called Elena into his office. You're losing students. Care to explain why? They weren't ready to learn. Thought expertise meant they didn't need fundamentals anymore. I'm not here to coddle egos. You're here to train snipers, not drive them away. I'm here to train snipers who can operate beyond conventional parameters. That requires breaking down their assumptions about what's possible. Some people can't handle that breakdown. Better they leave now than fail when it matters. Brennan's expression was ice. You have 9 students left. Lose more and this program shuts down. Understood. Yes, sir. Week 2, they moved to the range. Elena had them shooting at 400 meters easy range for experienced snipers. But she added complications. Shoot after running 800 meters. Shoot while cold and exhausted. Shoot with non-dominant hand. Shoot while someone screamed in their ear. This is harassment, Davies said after missing 5 straight shots while Elena played recordings of Rangers calling for help over loudspeakers. This is combat. You think the enemy waits for ideal conditions. You think your body stops shaking because you need it to. You think Rangers die quietly so you can concentrate. Elena turned off the recording. Make the shot or don't, but don't pretend you're ready for reality when you can't handle simulated stress. Davies threw his rifle down, walked off the range, didn't come back. 8 students left. Week 3 was when things broke. Elena had them shooting at 800 meters through vegetation. Standard sniper range, but complicated by trees and brush that blocked direct sight lines. 7 of the 8 couldn't make the shot consistently. This is impossible, a German sniper named Hoffman said after his 10th miss. The vegetation throws off the round's trajectory. You can't calculate for every branch and leaf. You're right. You can't calculate for every variable. So you calculate for the important ones and accept that probability replaces certainty. Elena picked up a rifle left-handed since her right arm wasn't functional. Chambered a round. Watch. She fired. The round went through a gap in the vegetation that looked too small for a bullet traveled 800 meters and hit center mass on the target. Hoffman stared. How? Math. Wind reading. Understanding that vegetation deflects rounds less than you think if you choose the right gaps. And most importantly, accepting that sometimes you take the shot even when the math says it's barely possible, because barely possible is better than watching people die while you wait for perfect conditions. Show us again. Elena spent the next 2 hours demonstrating, shooting through vegetation, shooting around obstacles, shooting at angles that required calculating both gravity and trajectory curvature. Her shoulder was screaming by shot 30. She kept shooting until shot 50 because teaching mattered more than pain. That night she collapsed in her quarters and couldn't lift her arm at all. Chen found her there, pale and sweating. You're going to destroy that shoulder permanently. It's already destroyed. Now it's just useful. Elena. I have 8 students left, Chen. 8 people who might face situations where conventional shooting isn't enough, where they need to know what's possible beyond what's comfortable. I can teach them in the next 5 weeks, or I can protect my shoulder. Not both. Math's simple. The math says you're going to end up unable to function. Then I end up unable to function. But those 8 students survived situations they wouldn't have survived otherwise. That's the equation. 1 damaged shoulder versus 8 potential saves. Easy math. Chen looked at her like she was insane. Maybe she was. Hard to tell anymore. Week 4, Elena taught them extended range theory. Not just shooting. Shooting far through conditions that made far impossible. They worked on ranges from 900 to 200 meters. Started with perfect conditions. Then added wind. Then added elevation changes. Then added movement. Then added all 3 simultaneously. Nobody shoots like this in combat, Miller said, after missing his 20th shot at 1,000 meters with wind. I do, Elena replied. Did. 18 times in 1 engagement. 16 hits, 2 misses that still haunt me. Those reports are exaggerated. Chen, Elena called over her former spotter. Show them. Chen pulled out his tablet, pulled up the documentation he'd compiled. Every shot Elena had made, every range, every condition, every hit. Video evidence of the brass casings on the ridge. Ballistic analysis proving the shots came from her position. Testimony from the rangers she'd saved. The students went silent. This is real, Hoffman whispered. You actually made these shots. I made these shots, under combat stress, while watching people die, with a shoulder that was tearing itself apart with every round, because the math said they were possible and rangers needed them to be possible. Elena pulled up one particular shot. This one, 1,100 meters, 6-inch gap in trees, moving target, wind right to left at 7 miles per hour, temperature dropping. Math said 23% probability of hit. I took the shot anyway. Why? Davies had returned, standing in the back. He'd come back after hearing other students talk about what was happening in the class. 23% is terrible odds. 23% was better than 0%, which was the probability of that ranger surviving if I didn't shoot. Sometimes you take terrible odds because terrible odds are all you have. Elena zoomed in on the target data. This is what I'm teaching you. Not perfect shooting. Adequate shooting when perfect is impossible. Because combat doesn't wait for perfect. Combat just kills people while you're waiting for conditions to improve. Week 5, they started live fire at extended range. Elena made them shoot at 1,000 meters minimum. Made them calculate every variable without tools. Made them take shots when conditions were terrible and probability was low. Miller hit his first extended range target on Thursday. Broke down crying afterward. I've been shooting for 9 years, he said. Never thought I could make that shot. Thought the reports about you were exaggerated. Thought nobody could actually operate at those ranges. But the math works. The math actually works. The math always works, Elena said quietly. The question is, whether you trust it enough to pull the trigger when your instincts scream, you'll miss. By week 6, all 8 students were making shots at 1,000 meters consistently. Elena pushed them to 100, then 150, then 200. They failed more than they succeeded, but their success rate was climbing. Brennan watched from the observation tower, his expression unreadable. Your students are performing above expected parameters, he said when Elena filed her weekly report. They're performing at the parameters they're capable of. Previous training just never pushed them to discover those parameters. Or previous training recognized realistic limitations and didn't encourage cowboys to take shots they shouldn't take. Elena looked at him directly. Sir, with respect, every student in my class has at least 50 confirmed kills. They've all operated in combat. They all understand risk assessment. Teaching them to extend their capabilities isn't encouraging cowboy behavior. It's giving them options when conventional options run out. Options that might save lives when saving lives requires operating beyond doctrine. Your cowboy behavior got you court-martialed. My behavior saved 10 rangers who'd be dead if I'd followed doctrine. That's not cowboy behavior. That's adaptive problem solving. Brennan's jaw tightened. You really believe you were right to disobey orders? I believe I was right to prioritize lives over process. Whether that's the same as right to disobey orders is above my pay grade. I'm just a private trying to pass on knowledge before my shoulder completely fails, and I can't demonstrate any more. How bad is it? Bad enough that I'll never fire a precision rifle again after this class ends. Every shot I take now removes shots I could take later. I'm spending my remaining capability on teaching because teaching has better return on investment than anything else I could do with a destroyed shoulder. For the first time, Brennan's expression softened slightly. You're really going to destroy yourself for this class. I already destroyed myself in that forest. This is just deciding what the destruction buys. Would rather it buy 8 competent snipers than 8 more years of desk duty pretending my shoulder works. Dead. Week 7 was integration training. Elena created scenarios that combined everything they'd learned. Extended range shots through vegetation, moving targets at variable distances, multiple threats requiring rapid engagement priority decisions, high-stress conditions with audio recordings of people dying. The students struggled, failed more often than they succeeded, but their failure rate was dropping and their decision-making was improving. Then Davies made a shot that changed everything. 1,200 meters, heavy wind. Target partially obscured by trees, moving left to right at walking speed. Davies took 20 seconds to calculate, adjusted for wind, adjusted for movement, adjusted for partial obscurement. Fired. Hit. The range went silent. I made it, Davies whispered. I actually made it. 1,200 meters, through wind and trees and movement, and I made it. You made it because the math said you would, Elena said. Because you trusted your calculations over your fear. Because you understood that barely possible is still possible. That's what this training is about. Not making you better shots. Making you better at trusting mathematics when everything else says you'll fail. By week 8, all 8 students were consistently making shots past 1,000 meters. More importantly, they were making good decisions about when to take those shots and when not to. Understanding that capability doesn't equal obligation, that just because you can make a shot doesn't mean you should. The final exam was simple. Each student got one scenario. Extended range, bad conditions, multiple variables. They had 30 seconds to decide whether to take the shot or refuse. Both answers could be correct depending on their assessment. Miller went first, 1,100 meters, strong wind, partial obscurement. He calculated for 15 seconds, then put down his rifle. Shot's not ethical. Probability's too low. Risk of civilian casualties behind target is too high given misprobability. I'd reposition for better angle. Correct, Elena said. Sometimes the right shot is no shot. Next. All 8 students passed. All 8 made decisions that balanced capability with responsibility. All 8 understood that power without judgment is just danger in a different form. Brennan attended the graduation ceremony. 8 snipers receiving certificates that said they'd completed advanced marksmanship training under Private Elena Reyes. 8 operators who'd pushed their capabilities beyond what they'd thought possible. You did good work, Brennan said afterward, grudging respect in his voice. Lost 4 students, but the ones who stayed are operating at levels I didn't think were achievable. The ones who stayed were willing to question their assumptions. That's the only prerequisite for learning. Elena's arm was in a full sling now. 3 months of demonstrating had finally destroyed what surgery had tried to save. What's next? Next is medical retirement. Your shoulder's done. Doctor says you need full reconstruction, and even then you'll never have full function. You've got 90 days to out-process. And the curriculum stays. We're making it standard for experienced sniper personnel. Your name won't be on it legal wanted that removed given your court-martial, but your methods will be taught. Brennan paused. For what it's worth, you were right. About teaching. About pushing capabilities. About questioning doctrine when doctrine gets people killed. I was wrong to oppose your posting here. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. You sacrificed your shoulder to prove your point. That's not victory. That's just expensive education for the institution. After Brennan left, the 8 students found Elena in the range house packing her materials. What happens now? Miller asked. Now you go back to your units and you operate at the level you're capable of operating. You make shots other people think are impossible. You save lives that would have been lost. You pass on what you learned to the next generation. That's what happens now. And I retire. Get my shoulder reconstructed. Probably end up teaching civilian shooting courses or writing manuals or consulting for manufacturers. The usual path for snipers who break themselves. Hoffman stepped forward. Private Reyes. It's Elena. I'm retiring. Rank doesn't matter anymore. Elena. You changed how I think about shooting. About capability. About what's possible when mathematics meets determination. I've been operating for 11 years. Never had an instructor push me the way you pushed. Never understood that limitations were often just failures of imagination. Good. Use that understanding. Make shots that save lives. That's the only thanks I need. Davies was last. The shot you refused in Prague, the one that got you transferred. What was it? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Target was 1,500 meters. Elevated position. Wind was perfect. Shot was easy. Easiest shot I'd ever been asked to make. But making it would have killed a government official our politicians wanted alive for diplomatic reasons. Would have prevented a massacre but started a war. Command ordered me to take it. I refused. 1,700 civilians died 3 days later. I got transferred to conventional forces where I couldn't cause political problems. Do you regret it? Every day. Because I could have saved 1,700 people with one shot. But I'd have started a war that would have killed thousands more. Some mathematics don't have good answers, just degrees of terrible. You learn to live with choosing the least terrible option and carrying the weight of everyone you couldn't save. That's a hard way to live. It's the only way to live when you have the capability to end lives from distances where people don't know you exist. Power without conscience is just murder with a scope. Conscience without power is just watching people die. You need both. Always both. Elena picked up her bag. Now go. Make me proud. Make shots that matter. Save people worth saving. That's your job now. They left slowly, each one shaking her hand. Left hand since the right wasn't working, and walking away changed. Elena stood alone in the range house she'd occupied for 8 weeks. Thought about 18 shots in a forest. About 2 letters to families. About 8 students who'd learned what she'd spent 32 years learning. About a shoulder that had finally given everything it had to give. The math was done. 10 Rangers saved. 8 snipers trained. 1 career finished. 1 shoulder destroyed. 1 private retiring with knowledge that teaching had been worth every lost capability. Sometimes the equation balances in ways you don't expect. Sometimes spending yourself completely is the only mathematics that matters. Elena turned off the lights and walked away knowing that somewhere in the world those 8 snipers would face impossible situations and make impossible shots and save lives that doctrine would have lost. That was legacy enough. That was everything. The retirement paperwork came through 3 weeks later while Elena was in physical therapy trying to regain enough shoulder function to dress herself. The therapist was encouraging. Elena was realistic. Some damage couldn't be repaired, only managed. You're making progress, the therapist said, watching Elena struggle to lift her arm past 90 degrees. I'm making the minimum progress necessary to avoid total disability rating. There's a difference. You're impossibly hard on yourself. I'm impossibly realistic about capabilities. Optimism doesn't rebuild rotator cuffs. Chen found her in the therapy room afterward, sweating and exhausted from an hour of exercises that would have been routine 6 months ago. You look terrible, he said. You look employed. How's the new assignment? Boring. They stationed me with a conventional sniper team. Nobody wants to push past 800 meters. Nobody wants to question doctrine. I spend most of my time explaining why your methods work and being told I'm wrong because you got court-martialed. So the institution learned nothing. The institution learned that punishing excellence is easier than acknowledging failure. Your curriculum's being taught at Benning, but your name's been stripped from it. Students learn your methods without knowing who developed them. That's progress, apparently. Elena wiped sweat from her face with her left hand. Progress is progress. Whether my name's attached is irrelevant. The knowledge exists. That's what matters. Doesn't it bother you that they're using everything you taught them while pretending you don't exist? Chen, I'm 55 years old with a destroyed shoulder and a rank so low I could trip over it. Being bothered by institutional politics requires energy I don't have. She stood testing her range of motion. Still limited, still painful, still functional enough for civilian life. What I care about is whether those 8 students are using what they learned, whether Rangers are coming home alive because someone made a shot doctrine said was impossible, whether the next time an experienced NCO warns about terrain, some young officer actually listens. That's the math that matters. You're really okay with this, with everything. Elena thought about it, about Dunn and Patel, about 18 shots and 2 misses, about 10 Rangers breathing and 8 snipers trained, about a career ended and a shoulder destroyed and a legacy that wouldn't carry her name. Yeah, she said finally, I'm really okay with this. But 3 days later, everything changed. Chen showed up at her quarters at 0600 hours, holding his phone with an expression Elena had learned meant trouble. You need to see this. The video was grainy shot from a distance clearly taken without official authorization. It showed Elena on the range at Benning, demonstrating extended range shooting to her students. Showed her making a 200-meter shot, left-handed with a shoulder that barely functioned. Showed her explaining the mathematics while students watched in awe. The video had 17 million views in 48 hours. How did this get out? Elena demanded. One of your students posted it, wouldn't say which one, used an anonymous account, added context about your court-martial, about the Rangers you saved, about how the military stripped your name from curriculum you developed. Chen scrolled through comments. It's viral. Everyone's talking about it. About age discrimination, about institutional failure, about punishing excellence. You're famous. I don't want to be famous. I want to retire quietly and rebuild my shoulder and move on. Too late. Look at this. Chen pulled up another screen. News articles, opinion pieces, military advocacy groups demanding investigations, congressional representatives asking questions. Your story broke open something bigger than you. People are talking about how we treat experienced personnel, about mandatory retirement ages, about listening to NCOs, about outcome versus process. You've become a symbol. I'm not a symbol. I'm just a private trying to... Elena's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. This is Elena Reyes. Private Reyes, this is Senator Patricia Morrison, Armed Services Committee. I'd like to speak with you about testimony regarding military personnel policies and treatment of experienced service members. Elena sat down slowly. Senator, I'm retired military. I can't testify about... You can testify about whatever you want. You're a private citizen now. Retirement papers processed yesterday. You're no longer bound by chain of command restrictions. Morrison's voice was firm. I've read your court-martial transcripts. I've read after-action reports from the forest engagement. I've watched that video of you teaching. And I've spoken with Lieutenant Webb, who provided me with documentation about command failures that led to that ambush. Private Reyes, you have an opportunity to change institutional culture. The question is whether you're willing to use that opportunity. What exactly are you asking me to do? Testify before Congress about age discrimination in military service, about institutional resistance to experience, about what happens when we prioritize process over outcome, about why one of NATO's most effective snipers was told she was too old at 55, while politicians 70 years old make national security decisions. Elena closed her eyes, thought about every young officer who'd dismissed her, every commander who'd suggested desk duty, every laugh when someone called her grandma, every Ranger who'd died because expertise got ignored. When 2 weeks, congressional hearing room, full media coverage, prepared testimony followed by questions from committee members. It'll be public, it'll be permanent, and it'll probably make you more enemies in the military establishment. I'm already retired with a court-martial on my record. I don't have much left to lose. Good, because what you have to say needs to be said. Someone needs to stand up and explain what experience costs and what losing experience costs more. You're that someone. After Morrison hung up, Chen stared at Elena. You're really going to testify in front of Congress about everything? Someone needs to. Might as well be me. What are they going to do, court-martial me again? They could destroy your retirement benefits, could classify everything so you can't speak, could make your life very difficult. They already made my life difficult. This is just being difficult in return with a larger audience. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Media requests Elena refused. Interview offers she declined. Messages from military personnel thanking her or condemning her in equal measure. Through it all, she worked on her testimony with Morrison's staff, crafting words that would explain 32 years of watching competence get dismissed because of birth dates on files. Webb called 3 days before the hearing. I'm testifying too, about the ambush, about ignoring your warnings, about how command prioritized my pride over tactical reality. You don't have to do this, Lieutenant. Your career. My career survives because you made 18 impossible shots. The least I can do is tell the truth about why those shots were necessary. Webb paused. Dunn and Patel deserved better than dying because I was too arrogant to listen. This testimony is for them, and for everyone else who'll die if we don't fix this broken system. The rangers from the forest started reaching out. Morrison wanted to testify about watching his squad leader get shot while Elena eliminated the threat. Delgado wanted to talk about bleeding out while impossible shots bought her time for medical evacuation. All 12 survivors wanted to speak. Morrison's office could only accommodate 4. The other 8 wrote statements, Morrison's aide explained. We'll submit them as evidence, congressional record, permanent documentation of what happened and why. Elena read the statements late at night alone in her quarters. 12 young soldiers explaining how one 55-year-old sniper had saved their lives while operating from an unauthorized position because command had failed to prevent the ambush she'd warned about. 12 voices saying experience mattered. 12 witnesses to institutional failure. The hearing room was packed, cameras everywhere, senators in their seats looking important. Elena in her civilian clothes with her arms still partially immobilized, feeling like an imposter. Senator Morrison, not the ranger, opened with questions about Elena's service record. 32 years, 14 deployments. Congressional Medal of Honor she'd received for classified operations and refused to discuss. Transfer from Special Operations after Prague. Court-martial after the Forest engagement. Forced retirement at 55. Private Reyes? Or should I call you Master Sergeant? Your rank before demotion. Can you explain to this committee why one of NATO's most experienced snipers was told repeatedly she was too old for field operations? Elena leaned toward the microphone. Senator, I was told I was too old because the military has decided that capability expires on a schedule. That 55 years old automatically means diminished function regardless of actual performance. That experience is less valuable than youth despite evidence showing experience saves lives. Youth would lose. Can you provide examples? Yes, ma'am. The forest engagement. I identified terrain as high-probability ambush site. Assessment was dismissed by officers who'd never analyzed that type of ground. I was told my concerns were outdated thinking. 2 days later, 12 rangers walked into an ambush I'd predicted. 2 died immediately. 10 more would have died if I hadn't made 18 shots from unauthorized position at ranges command said were impossible. 18 shots, 16 hits, ranges from 840 to 1,200 meters through heavy vegetation. These numbers are in the official record. Yes, ma'am. Ballistic evidence confirmed. Brass casings recovered. Spotter notes documented every shot. The mathematics are undeniable. What's deniable is whether command should have listened to my initial assessment and prevented the ambush entirely. Senator Thompson, ranking minority member, leaned forward. Private Reyes, you admit you disobeyed orders. You operated without authorization. You violated chain of command. These are serious infractions regardless of outcome. Yes, sir. I violated regulations. I was court-martialed. I was demoted and forced into retirement. I accept those consequences. What I don't accept is the narrative that my violations were the problem when command failures created the situation requiring violation. That's a convenient excuse for insubordination. That's an accurate description of systemic failure, sir. I provided tactical assessment based on 32 years of terrain analysis. Assessment was dismissed because I'm 55 and the officer was 26 with a degree. 2 rangers died because youth was valued over experience. 10 more lived because I violated regulations. Those are facts. Whether they're convenient is irrelevant. The room erupted. Senators arguing, media recording. Elena, sitting quietly with her damaged shoulder and her destroyed career and her complete unwillingness to back down. Webb testified next, described the briefing where he'd called Elena grandma, described walking into terrain she'd identified as dangerous, described watching his rangers die while realizing he'd been catastrophically wrong. "I thought experience didn't matter," Webb said, voice shaking. "Thought my education and training made me qualified to dismiss someone with 3 decades of operational knowledge. I was wrong. Dunn and Patel paid for my arrogance with their lives." This committee needs to understand age isn't expiration. Experience isn't obsolescence. Sometimes the most important person in the room is the one everyone thinks is too old to matter. Morrison Ranger. Morrison testified about the moment he understood someone was providing overwatch, about watching enemy combatants drop at impossible ranges, about surviving because one 55-year-old sniper refused to accept that unauthorized meant wrong. "She saved my life," Morrison said simply. "Saved all our lives. Did it knowing she'd face court-martial. Did it because Rangers matter more than regulations. That's not insubordination. That's leadership. And we court-martialed her for it." Delgado testified last. Described bleeding from shrapnel wounds. Described thinking she'd die. Described hearing the enemy machine gun go silent and understanding someone was fighting for them from positions they couldn't see. Private Reyes, Master Sergeant Reyes. "She gave me time. Time to apply pressure to wounds. Time to call for medical evacuation. Time to survive. She bought that time with shots everyone said were impossible, made with a shoulder that was literally tearing apart. And when she finished saving us, the military demoted her and forced her into retirement. That's what we do to excellence when excellence doesn't fit our expectations." The committee broke for lunch. Elena found a quiet room and tried to process what was happening. 12 Rangers speaking truth. Webb admitting failure. Senators asking questions that suggested maybe something might change. Chen found her there. "You're winning. Can you feel it? The narrative's shifting. People are understanding. Understanding doesn't equal change. I've been in the military 32 years. I've watched plenty of things get understood without getting fixed. This time is different. This is public. This is permanent. This is documentation that can't be classified or buried. Maybe. Or maybe this is just theater that makes people feel better while changing nothing substantive. I'll believe in change when I see 20-year NCOs getting listened to instead of dismissed. When tactical expertise matters more than rank. When outcome gets valued above process." The afternoon session focused on broader implications. Other service members testifying about age discrimination. Statistics showing experienced personnel being forced out. Studies demonstrating that expertise in specialized fields doesn't diminish with age, it improves. One witness was a retired Navy pilot, 62 years old, who'd been forced into mandatory retirement despite perfect health and performance scores. Another was an Army communications specialist, 58, forced out, despite being the only person in her unit who understood certain legacy systems. "We're hemorrhaging institutional knowledge," the communications specialist said. "Forcing out people who know things nobody else knows because we've decided arbitrary age limits matter more than actual capability. Young soldiers are brilliant, but young soldiers don't know what they don't know. Experience teaches you what gaps exist. Losing that experience means gaps don't get filled until people die falling through them." The final question came from Senator Morrison herself, directed at Elena. "Private Reyes, if you could change one thing about how the military treats experienced personnel, what would it be?" Elena thought carefully. About Prague, about the forest, about 18 shots and 2 misses, about 8 students and a destroyed shoulder, about everything that had led to this moment. "I'd change the assumption that capability expires on a schedule," she said finally. "I'd implement performance-based assessments instead of age-based limitations. I'd create systems where tactical expertise gets weighted appropriately in decision-making. I'd teach young officers that the person with the most experience might be right, even when that person has silver in their hair and reading glasses in their pocket. Most importantly, I'd document costs." How many operations fail because experience gets dismissed? How many lives get lost because expertise gets ignored? How many Rangers die because someone decided age matters more than knowledge? Make those costs visible. Make leaders accountable for choosing youth over wisdom. Make sure that when someone like me warns about terrain and gets ignored, the consequences land on people who made the decision to ignore, not on the Rangers who die because of it. The hearing concluded at 1700 hours. Elena walked out of the building into media chaos. Cameras everywhere. Reporters shouting questions. She ignored all of it and went back to her quarters to do physical therapy exercises because shoulder recovery didn't care about congressional testimony. But the video of her testimony went more viral than the original training footage. 30 million views in 72 hours. Trending across platforms. Being discussed on news programs and military forums and corporate leadership podcasts. Elena became the face of age discrimination in professional settings. The symbol of what happens when institutions prioritize conformity over capability. The example of excellence punished for refusing to accept inadequate standards. She hated every second of it. "You're famous," Chen said when he visited a week later. "Everyone knows your name. Everyone's talking about military reform. Congress is drafting legislation. You changed something, Elena." I testified about problems. Legislation drafts don't fix problems. Implementation fixes problems. Talk to me when 20-year NCOs stop getting dismissed, when tactical expertise gets weighted appropriately, when Rangers stop dying because command ignores warnings. Until then, this is just words. You're impossible to satisfy. I'm impossible to fool with performative change that doesn't address root problems. There's a difference. But things did start changing. Small things at first. A memo from Pentagon leadership about valuing experience. Training programs incorporating Elena's curriculum with her name restored. Specialized positions created for senior NCOs with critical expertise. Then bigger changes. Legislation extending service limits for specialized personnel. Performance reviews weighted more heavily than age in retention decisions. Mandatory consultation requirements when experienced NCOs identify tactical concerns. 6 months after the testimony, General Vance called. "The Reyes Protocol," Vance said without preamble. "That's what they're calling it. When experienced NCOs raise tactical concerns, commanding officers are now required to document their assessment and justification for proceeding if they disagree. Creates accountability. Makes ignoring expertise a career decision instead of a casual one." "That's good," Elena said carefully. "Does it work?" 3 near misses in the last 4 months where operations got modified based on NCO input. 2 of them looked like your forest engagement young officers walking into terrain that experienced personnel identified as problematic. Both times command listened, adjusted, nobody died. So maybe 2 families aren't planning funerals because someone remembered what happens when expertise gets dismissed. Maybe 2 families aren't planning funerals because you testified and forced institutional change. Vance paused. "For what it's worth, you were right. About Prague. About the forest. About everything. I should have supported you instead of transferring you. That's my failure. I've carried it for 8 years. General, I'm retiring next month. 35 years of service. Thought I'd go out quietly. Instead, I'm going to submit a report about Prague. Declassify what I can. Explain what happened and why. Those 1,700 civilians deserve more than classified files and political convenience." Elena felt something crack in her chest. 8 years of carrying Prague. 8 years of wondering if refusing that shot had been right. 8 years of nightmares about children in refugee camps. Will it help? I don't know, but it's truth. That's got to count for something. After Vance hung up, Elena sat in the quiet of her retirement apartment and thought about mathematics. 10 Rangers saved versus career destroyed. 8 snipers trained versus shoulder permanently damaged. 2 near misses prevented versus years of fighting institutions. 1,700 civilians lost versus potential war prevented. The equations never balanced perfectly, but they balanced well enough. Her shoulder had recovered to about 60% function, enough to live independently, not enough to fire precision rifles. She'd started consulting for law enforcement sniper programs teaching extended range theory to police marksmen. Started writing a book about tactical decision-making under uncertainty. Started mentoring young veterans transitioning to civilian life. Started building a legacy that didn't require a weapon or a rank or institutional approval. Webb visited on a Tuesday, now a captain with his own company. He brought his entire command team, 15 officers and NCOs, who'd asked to meet the sniper who'd saved their commander's life. "I teach them about you," Webb said. "About the briefing where I was wrong. About the forest. About making 18 impossible shots. About what it costs to be right. When being right means violating expectations." They needed to understand that leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about recognizing who is and listening. That's good. Are they listening to their NCOs? Every day, we've implemented local versions of the Reyes protocol. Any NCO can flag tactical concerns. Any flag requires documented response from chain of command, creates accountability, makes ignoring expertise transparent. Webb smiled. "Haven't lost anyone yet. 4 deployments, 0 combat deaths. Some of that's luck. Most of it's listening to people who know things we don't." The 8 students from Benning stayed in touch. Hoffman had made a 350-meter shot in combat, saving a patrol pinned by enemy fire. Davies had trained an entire SAS squadron in extended-range techniques. Miller had written the updated Army Sniper Field Manual incorporating Elena's curriculum. All 8 were alive. All 8 were teaching others. All 8 were proving that capability extended beyond conventional limitations when mathematics met determination. 2 years after retirement, Elena received a letter from Dunn's mother. Short, direct, heartbreaking. "Thank you for trying to save my son. Lieutenant Webb told me you warned about that terrain, that you made impossible shots trying to protect them, that you destroyed your career trying to prevent what happened. Marcus's death isn't your failure. It's everyone's failure who ignored your warnings. Thank you for carrying his memory. Thank you for teaching others so maybe fewer mothers receive letters like the one I received. Thank you for being the person who tried when trying cost everything." Elena read that letter 50 times, cried through most of them, added it to the box where she kept reminders of why mathematics mattered, even when mathematics didn't bring people back. 5 years after retirement, the military invited her back to Benning for a ceremony. They were naming the Advanced Marksmanship building after her. The Reyes Center for Precision Shooting. Full honors, public acknowledgement, institutional recognition they'd refused while she was serving. Elena almost didn't go. Chen convinced her. "They need to see you," he said. "Need to see what excellence looks like when institutions finally stop fighting it. Need to understand that you survived their best efforts to erase you and became more influential retired than you ever were in uniform." The ceremony was enormous. Hundreds of snipers past and present. The 8 students from her class now senior instructors themselves. Webb now a major. Morrison, both Morrisons now training commanders. Delgado now teaching combat medicine. All the Rangers from the forest alive and serving and carrying forward lessons learned when one sniper refused to let them die. General Brennan gave the speech. He'd mellowed over the years, or maybe just learned what Elena had always known, that fighting excellence was exhausting and pointless. Master Sergeant Elena Reyes, and yes, I'm using her actual rank, the one she earned over 32 years of exemplary service, taught us something we desperately needed to learn. That age is experience, not expiration. That capability matters more than conformity. That sometimes the most important person in any organization is the one everyone thinks is obsolete. Brennan looked directly at Elena. "We failed you, dismissed you, court-martialed you, tried to erase your contributions. You survived all of it and built a legacy that will outlive all of us. This building carries your name. But your real legacy is every sniper who makes impossible shots because you taught them mathematics beats limitations. Every Ranger who comes home alive because commanders learned to listen. Every NCO who speaks up because you proved that being right matters more than being comfortable. That legacy is permanent. This building is just acknowledgement we should have given decades ago." After the ceremony, young snipers lined up to meet her, asked questions, wanted advice, treated her like she imagined celebrities got treated, which was uncomfortable and strange. One young woman, maybe 23, hung back until the crowd cleared. Master Sergeant Reyes, I'm Private Jessica Torres. I'm starting sniper school next month. I'm 23. Everyone tells me I'm too young, not experienced enough. Should wait a few years. But I read your story about being told you're too old, about proving capability matters more than demographics. And I thought, if she can fight age discrimination, maybe I can fight youth discrimination. Maybe competence is what matters, not birth dates. Elena studied her, saw herself 32 years earlier, young, determined, ready to prove something to people who'd already decided she couldn't. You're right. Competence is what matters. But here's what nobody tells you: proving competence is exhausting. Fighting discrimination is endless. Being right when everyone says you're wrong costs more than you expect. You ready for that cost? I don't know, but I'm ready to try. Because someone has to, and you showed it's possible. Yeah, I showed it's possible. Also showed it destroys shoulders and careers and any expectation of easy retirement. Elena softened slightly. But you know what? Those 8 students I trained, they're teaching hundreds now. Those hundreds will teach thousands. That cascade effect, that's what makes the cost worthwhile. So go to sniper school. Be impossibly good. Make shots people say are impossible. And when they tell you you're too young or too female or too anything, remember that limitations are just failure of imagination dressed up as policy. Then prove them wrong with mathematics. Torres left grinning. Probably had no idea what she was getting into. Probably would figure it out through experience. Probably would be fine. Chen found Elena afterward, watching the crowd disperse. How's it feel having a building named after you? Strange. I spent 32 years being invisible. Now I'm architecture. You're more than architecture. You're proof that fighting institutions can work, that speaking truth matters, that one person refusing to accept inadequate standards can change systems. Chen paused. Are you happy with how everything turned out? Elena thought about it, about Dunn and Patel and Graves, about 10 Rangers breathing, about 8 students teaching, about shoulder rebuilt to 60%, about testifying before Congress, about legislation passed, about protocols implemented, about young snipers learning that impossible was just mathematics with scary probability. Happy isn't the word. Satisfied, maybe. I did what I could with what I had, made shots that mattered, trained people who'll train others, forced changes that'll save lives. That's enough. That's everything. They stood there watching the Reyes center this building that would teach generations of snipers that limitations were negotiable and mathematics beat expectations every time. You know what the best part is, Chen said. 50 years from now, young snipers will train in this building. Learn your methods, make your shots. Never know you were court-martialed. Never know institutions fought you. Never know how hard you had to fight to prove what's now considered standard doctrine. They'll just know the math works. That capability matters. That experience teaches things textbooks can't. And they'll be better snipers because you existed. That's legacy. That's real legacy. Not buildings or medals or fame, just knowledge persisting after you're gone because someone needed that knowledge to survive. Elena nodded slowly. 55 years old. Destroyed shoulder. Forced retirement. Congressional testimony. Named building. 8 students teaching hundreds. 2 protocols preventing deaths. 1 legacy that would outlive her body. The mathematics balanced. 10 Rangers breathing. 8 snipers trained. Countless future lives saved by institutional changes she'd forced through testimony and stubbornness, and refusing to accept that age meant expiration. That was the equation. That was everything. Elena Reyes walked away from the ceremony, from the building, carrying her name from the institution that had fought her every step and finally acknowledged it had been wrong. She walked away satisfied that 32 years of service, 1 destroyed shoulder, 18 impossible shots, and complete unwillingness to accept that experience meant obsolescence had built something permanent. Not fame, not recognition, not comfort, just knowledge that would save lives long after she was gone. And in the end, when mathematics met mortality, that was the only equation that mattered. Not how many years you served, but how many people survived because you'd been there when survival required someone who understood that impossible was just probability, dressed up in fear, and that the right person with the right training could make probability look like certainty when lives depended on it. Master Sergeant Elena Reyes had been that person. The rangers who walked out of that forest alive proved it. The students who learned from her carried it forward. The protocols bearing her name ensured it would continue. That was legacy enough. That was everything that mattered.